Do you want to do a countdown?
Yep, go ahead, countdown.
Good morning, everyone. It is September 20th at 11:30 a.m. Welcome to the meeting of the Caradoc Housing Corporation. We'll start with roll call, and we have Chair Pammer is joining us via Zoom, but Member Martineau is absent today. Motion to approve the September 20th, 23 Caradoc Housing Corporation meeting agenda be approved as circulated. Someone to carry the motion. Councillor Canis, second by Member Zavitz. All in favor? Carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move to approval of the meeting minutes. We have a recommendation that the minutes from the meeting of August 16th, 2023 be approved as written. Someone to carry the motion. Member Zavitz, second by Chair Pammer. All in favor? Carried, thank you. And Chair Pammer, if I forget to get a question, please feel free to yell at me or to jump in. So, okay, financial matters. First, we'll receive the check details. We have a motion that the check detail from August 5th to September 12th be received for information. Someone to receive it. Member Kennis, second by Member Zavitz. All in favor? Carried. Director Dakin, did you want to go over the check detail?
There's nothing really out of the ordinary, other than you'll notice that we've now started paying some interest on the construction loan, which is tied to the mortgage. But other than that, it's sort of business as usual.
Were there any questions regarding the check details or any questions? Seeing none, well, we've already received it for information, we don't need to approve it. The financial reports, that the financial reports for August 2023 be received for information. Someone to carry the motion. Member Zavitz, second by Chair Pammer. All in favor? Carried. Director Dakin, you want to go over the budget reports?
Thank you. I'll just draw your attention to a couple things. So on the balance sheet, you'll notice the Adelaide Road project work in progress for 6.5 million, as well as the due to the Strathroy-Caradoc addition of the 1.1 million. On the balance sheet, that one's sort of self-explanatory with those adjustments. The other one is the profit loss for August 23rd. So August 2023, you'll notice the new mortgage interest expense now showing up in our profit loss. As we've discussed at previous meetings, the idea will be to separate these two properties out into their own profit loss, so we can sort of keep track of how those things work. So we'll start working on that now that we're starting to see some significant expenses in these in the new property. So we'll split those out. You'll also note on that same report there is a $1,500 deposit that we're doing some research on, trying to find out what that is for. Attempts to date have been unsuccessful, so now we're going back to the bank to see if they can put a trace on where that came from. Not a exorbitant amount of money, but we just need to make sure that it's in the proper account, so we're working on that one. Trial balances, again, same thing there. You'll see some of the new additions that we've alluded to earlier. And again, the same $1,500 deposit outstanding. The only thing to do with the sort of year-to-date budget to actual, obviously the grant skews the budget-to-date numbers, showing that we have this $720,000 surplus. When you pull that grant out, we're sitting at about a $35,000 surplus currently at the end of August. And again, you'll see the allusion to the $1,500 deposit that we're trying to track down. Those are those reports.
Thank you, Director Dakin. Any questions for Mr. Dakin? Member Cass.
A couple questions. The first one, the 6.56 million that we're carrying the Adelaide Road at this point, is that the cost that we, or the cost to date for the project is?
Through the chair to Member Kenneth, yes, that is correct. That's our sort of our cost to date.
Okay. And the second question would be the grant that we're getting from CMHC. Have we gotten all of that? Do we get it in chunks, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have got that whole thing, and so that really is the piece, that $685,000 was sort of the first installment. So obviously we need to figure out what happened to the other half of it, because it's all in there now. Plus the other thing is the draws that we've been receiving. We need to rectify those as well and get those in.
Any other questions?
I guess.
Yes, go ahead. Councilor
Maybe it's
Dennis.
not maybe this is not the appropriate time to ask, but so the building in terms of completion percentage at this point, where are we at?
I would say about 80, probably 80%. Most of the floors now are in. I know kitchen cabinets have started to be delivered. Vanities, those things. The next thing is I think they've slated appliances for last I heard around October. So I would say we're in the mid to high 80s. Sounds like a weather report.
Okay. Any other questions for Director Dakin? Okay. Move on to the next item, which is the 2024 budget discussions. I believe this is just a verbal discussion. Chair Pammer, did you want to lead that off?
Yep, happy to do that. So the finance or subcommittee met, and it was Tim, Frank, and myself met with Bill to go over the budget in a little more detail and have the opportunity to ask some questions and get some input. And I think we had a really good discussion, and there were a couple of items that Director Dakin was going to follow up on with some potential savings, and perhaps in some areas, and then in other areas just re-looking at the number we had slotted in there, because we want to make sure we get this as absolutely as accurate as possible as we can before rents are set. So I feel like we are getting there. There was a few questions that we need to follow up with, a couple questions we need to ask CMHC, particularly because our rents are going to include hydro. So how does that affect things when we look at the market rents as the baseline from which we have to go through for affordability? So we need to get a couple of those things answered, but I'm hopeful that we may have something to bring to the board, or we should have something to bring to the board for the October meeting. And I don't know if Frank or Tim, if you have anything you want to add, please go ahead.
Nope. Nothing? No? It's good. Did you have anything you'd like to add, Director Dakin?
No, other than I think the chair's right on with we're getting some questions answered, and we should have probably a more succinct budget available for the October meeting.
Okay. Just one comment, mine's just a comment. Thank you for the work on the budget, because I know there was some concern in the community, so thank you for the good work to everyone on that. Move to the item 6, Mount Bridges Affordable Housing Project, the general review report number 29. Motion that the general review report be received for information. Motion to receive the report, Councilor McKenna, second by member Zavitz. All in favor? Carried. Were there any questions or concerns regarding the review report? Councilor Canis.
One of the, I guess a general question, one of the pictures shows a broken window, and I just wondered, like, who covers the costs of that kind of stuff at this point? So.
Through the chair to Councillor Canis, it would be on the contractor to replace that window, or the subcontract, depending on who broke it. I'm not sure who broke it, but
Somebody's
whoever
paying
broke
for
it
it.
has to pay for it.
Okay.
Just like the grocery store, if you
Yep.
break it, you pay for it.
Okay.
Any other questions on the review? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to 6.2, tenant application criteria regarding new affordable housing. Chair Pammer, did you want to address that one?
This was just a follow-up item from our previous meeting. Member Zavitz was going to take a stab at creating some parameters for us to look at, as we will have to give that to the property manager once they're in place, and so they can start going through tenant applications. So I don't know, Tim, if you have anything to report on that.
I can have something ready for the October meeting, but what we were talking about before was some type of an income test, a certain amount times the rent for max income is that's what's been pretty normal in the City of London and Middlesex for affordable housing, and I think it's probably a good test for us to use as well. So I can definitely have that on the agenda for October.
I have sorry, go ahead, Chair.
Thing keeps, okay, sorry. I wonder too if we certainly need the income test in there, Tim, but do we need to have, we talked before about overhousing and things like that. So we'll also have to set out some criteria around that, meaning, we're not putting single people in 2 bedrooms and things like that. And then also the other part is making sure we are meeting the mandate given to us through part of our grant and our mortgage, which is that the housing is being provided primarily to serve seniors, veterans, and women and children fleeing violence. So I think we need to have all of that in the criteria, not just the income test. And if you want somebody else to work on that with you, we could create a little subgroup too, whatever you think, Tim.
Yeah, sounds great.
And I just get my comment, and thanks for that, Chair, was on the last part to ensure that we follow the criteria, the mandate of the applications. I think the income part is important, but I think the 3 criteria that were set out for us are maybe the most important. And just a question, that's for the affordable, but I would really like to see the market rate units also use that test of the 3 criteria if we could. There will be a lot of application, but I think if you set out that even the market rate are for the 3 mandate, I think that's a very wise course of action. Chair. Yep, Chair.
Yeah, that came up. Yeah, that came up in our discussion also, because the way the contract or the agreement reads with Caradoc Housing, with CMHC, it's not very clear as to whether that criteria, even in their own document, is referring to just the affordable units or the whole building. In fact, the way I read it, it actually does apply to the whole building. So that was one thing. Again, we just want to clarify with CMHC before we move forward, is one of the questions we had for them. But yeah, we'll start with what their direction is, and then we can decide how we want to proceed if we have an option at that point.
Okay. Member Zavitz?
Yeah. Do you think the women and children fleeing domestic violence, could that be taken either way? Like, could it be, you know, potentially a single father with children that's leaving a bad situation? Like I know that's not what it says in our CMHC thing, but I'm just curious whether we have to, whether it's women and children, or whether it could be a caretaker and children. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but yeah.
I'll comment and I'll let you, Chair. I think that's a valid point, because you need to be fair and equitable, and maybe you can apply that to the market rate units. Maybe you had a comment, Chair?
Yeah, I was gonna say that, it is very specific to women in the document, but we could expand perhaps that criteria to the other units, depending again how CMHC directs us on these units. Good question. But here's the sort of challenge I see with that, expanding it. We've had some discussion with how will people identify, and that's always a concern in a domestic violence situation, and we want to make sure that it's not abused either. So one thought that I had was in assisting with that, we could ask either from the county, the social service director to help us in reaching out to agencies that deal with women fleeing domestic violence, or we ourselves could just connect with the Women's Rural Resource Center here locally directly to get their referrals for someone who might need housing, and that way we ensure that the right women and children are getting housed. Now, having said that, to expand on your point, Tim, they do not serve men at this point, and I don't know of an agency that does, so that might be a little more difficult from that perspective.
Any other, Councillor Canis?
I think, I'm not sure how this is gonna come out, but when we're talking to CMHC, if these groups don't provide the renters to fill the building, we have to fill the building to make it cash flow. So do we have other options then if the groups that are targeted for the building, there aren't enough to fill the building? So, and I think that's a valid, a valid concern. So I think we need an answer on that as well. So.
Just a follow-up on all the criteria. Would the preference should be, or would be, or could be to residents of Strathroy-Caradoc? And I'm not sure, I'd heard at one point in time that if you had funds from CMHC, and Director Dakin may correct me, that residency maybe could not be a criteria, but I personally would like it to be that, the residents of Strathroy-Caradoc are, for lack of a better word, funding this. So I'm just gonna ask Director Dakin, have you heard anything about residency criteria?
Through the chair to yourself, not directly. I think Tim has alluded to that as well, that's a very gray area, and you get on thin ice sometimes when you start talking about residency.
I think part of the issue is you may have somebody, you could have somebody that's in London because that's where they could find housing, right. But they spent the first 50 years in Mount Bridges, but went to London because that's the only place they could go because there was no rental available. So, it's unfortunate to see when you build housing and you get people moving from Toronto and taking units. I think that's unfortunate for the local municipality, but I think by putting a resident of Strathroy-Caradoc, you're really hurting your potential to help people that maybe have been here their whole life.
Presumptuous of me, Chair, but I was going to make a suggestion that maybe we need to form subcommittee or someone come back with the criteria? Had you already said there was a subcommittee, or were you looking for a committee to work on it?
Yeah, so Tim was working on that because he has some experience, with applications in housing. But I think that it would, behoove us to have another person also work with Tim, because this is really important stuff, and we want to make sure we get it right for the community and for the future of the project. So if any of the board members want to sit on that, then I guess just let me know, and we'll set up a meeting. We'll coordinate a meeting time in the next week or two to sit down and start to hammer some of that out.
You may not be able to see my hand raised. I will offer to help with that, Chair. Okay. Were there any other comments, questions regarding the tenant application? Councillor Cass.
Just one thing I would point out, I think it came up in our budget meeting that Strathroy-Caradoc falls under the, what is it, the London CMA when it comes to pricing on and coming up with the affordable rates. So the rates in Mount Bridges will be pretty much the same as they'll be in London or St. Thomas, right? So I think, I think that the first, who's gonna apply to live there, it's probably gonna be mostly people from that are close to the area to begin with, right? So I mean, there's gonna be a lot lower rents there, and that's gonna bring applicants in from other locations. So I think I'm safe in saying that. I think the tendency will be to have local people, be the first to fill it anyways.
Okay. All right. Seeing no further questions. Oh, sorry, Chair. You can just yell at me.
Just waving furiously, someone will see me. We also have a wait list. So, and I would venture to guess that most of those people were local people, because that wait list got started at the beginning when the municipality started announcing the project. So we have to deal with the wait list too. So I'm assuming most of those people are local. So we'll be going through that list too. So that might help keep it more local, at least initially. That's all.
Okay. A road sign is a great idea too, because a road sign gets people that are driving by the unit versus people that are farther away.
Okay. Any other questions regarding that? Move on to 6.3, website and communication plan. Okay, we'll throw it over to you, Chair.
Yeah, so obviously starting to get more phone calls and inquiries both at the town, and the town is giving people my phone number about, where am I on the list and how is this gonna work and what are the rents, et cetera, et cetera. So I had a discussion with Brianna, who manages the municipality's website, and she feels it's possible for us to have a page on the municipal website where we can share information. And if the board agrees, I think that would be a great idea, but I'll put it out there for you guys. What we thought it could entail is, links and information. So basically a bit of a newsreel. So after a board meeting, when we approve something or there's any updates, I could give that to her to put on that website. It would also have, when we have a property management in place, an application form or direction to them. It could have, other relevant information, some nice photos of the buildings, and it would be both Parkview Manor and the new building, and with just a central place for people to get information and where we can keep the community updated as we move through this process, because there's going to be a lot of questions and there's a lot of people waiting. So just want to see if that's something the board is in agreement with, and we can hopefully get that moving forward.
Any comments?
I think that would be terrific. I also think that if there could be a form fillable instead of people calling, just to sign up for our updates or sign up for our housing, you know, if that's possible, it would just maybe stop people calling the office. But that's my.
No, I think that's a great idea. My comment, Chair, it's probably why we need to fast track the tenant application, the criteria. I think it's important. That's what people will be looking for too. But I do support communication, so we will talk to the CAO and get her to agree to a website. Any other comments? Councillor Canis.
Just on that, I haven't really thought this all through, but you know, the relationship between the municipality and this corporation, I guess, should it be a page on our municipal website, or should it be a totally separate website and entity that isn't tied to the municipality? And I don't have the answer to that, but I just, you know, yeah.
Go ahead, I can comment, because I guess that's a fair question. It would be, I would liken it to the police service, right? There's a relationship, but it's separate, and I know that the police department, they have their own website. It's a good point. Did you have something, Tim?
Yeah, I think separation might be actually beneficial because, you know, otherwise, once you get the building filled too, you're gonna have 37 more tenants. And if they think that every time that there's an issue, they could be calling staff here, I mean, that's a pain that you don't necessarily want in the future.
Did you have a comment on that, Chair?
Yeah, the little problem with that is we don't have staff to build a website or maintain a website. Yeah, I don't know how we would do that, and then would it then be the board's responsibility to update it? I mean, once a website is up and, pretty much functional, it's not that hard to put updates. I do lots of web stuff for our business, but the design and everything, I guess we would have to look at getting some funds and hiring somebody to do that.
I would, why don't I take that as a project? I'll have a discussion with the CAO. I think, I do agree with the idea, and I think it's a valid point that we try to do what we can to separate the two entities. And I hadn't thought of Tim's point that, you know, people thinking it's municipal and are calling through to the municipality. I think the question that needs to be answered, how does the police board, how does the police service do it? Do they have, is it the municipality? So I'll take that as a project, Chair. I will find out how we can manage it internally and report back. That okay?
If I could just
Yeah, go ahead,
comment
Councilor.
on that. I think the police board is a separate, and Tri-Township Arena might be another one, where it's a separate entity. The town probably, the municipality provides IT assistance, I expect, for those things, but not necessarily, it's not the same site. And so
Right.
I think that's what we need to look at, so.
We can have that discussion, find out. Any more on website? Do you have something else, Chair, on the website? No? Okay. 6.4, discussion on the property taxes for Caradoc housing. Did you want to lead that one, Chair, or did someone else want to?
Sure.
Yours, Chair.
No, I can go ahead. Can start.
Yeah.
Member has requested that we have discussion about asking for property tax relief for both Parkview Manor and the new build. And the reasoning for this is, one, it is our understanding at this point that that's a possibility, that there is the flexibility to relieve us of property tax because we're providing attainable housing in the community. And also it would certainly go a long way into balancing our budget and helping us really keep the rents as low as possible. And I just want to emphasize is when we're doing the budget, I mean, that's really our goal. Caradoc Housing is not here to make a profit. We need to have reserve funds so we can take care of things as they come up. But other than that, we really want to provide the most affordable housing we can for the community. So having those property taxes waived would certainly go a long way in that. I understand the procedure would be that we would have to go to council, obviously, to make a request, and that we would also have to go to the county because part of those taxes go to the county. So I believe we'd be looking for tax relief from both. So open it up to the members for discussion.
I will wait for Director Dakin, but this discussion is familiar to me from a lot of Middlesex housing, but I guess the first question that we should ask is, Director Dakin, would this qualify for tax relief?
I think the answer is anyone can apply to the municipality for tax relief. It's up to the municipality if they want to provide that tax relief. So currently we don't provide it to the other building. One of the things that we've been doing for affordable housing, which is now part of the property tax regime, is that any affordable housings are now taxed at residential rate, not the multi-res rate. So those kinds of reliefs are already in place, but the sort of, I would say the exemption, I guess is the term, is a decision of council.
Okay, just I guess for my head, municipal buildings, I believe, are exempt, right? That's right, so this isn't deemed a municipal building then, correct?
Well, it's owned by a corporation, which is not,
Okay,
which is also owned,
okay,
I guess, by the municipality.
Okay.
So the ownership is actually a corporation, no different than Mr. Zavitz.
okay. That was my question. Councillor Kennis?
I think it needs some investigation because I on the other hand, I understand the reason for it. On the other hand, if we are seeing as competitors in the rental market with other private owners, then they might say we are giving ourselves an unfair advantage because we don't pay property taxes. So I think it needs, not totally opposed to it, but I think it needs some investigation as to what the normal is in these types of circumstances in the province.
Members,
I think the biggest thing we have to remember is that Caradoc Housing is a non-for-profit. So at the end of the day, if we are making profit, the profit will go back into more housing potentially, or reducing debts so that we can build more housing. So I think that my take on it is the lower we can keep our operating expenses, by far the better. And one of my comments in our budget meeting was that we owe the municipality back 1.1 million at some point. By reducing the property taxes, we may be able to pay that money back in a more speedy manner, which would allow the municipality to create, have money to build more housing down the road if the potential was there. I know in other municipalities, the non-for-profit housing aren't paying tax. I own affordable housing as a private developer, and I have to pay the property tax. And I sometimes, hear what the other councillor was saying, that it feels unfair, but at the end of the day, my buildings are for profit, and if there's extra money left over, it's for me. So a property tax reduction would be putting money in my pocket. In this case, nobody's actually benefiting directly from the reduction. So I think it would be a good thing for the board, but at the end of the day, it'll be council's decision.
I guess my comment is, I feel like I'm at the county where I have to wear two hats. So the hat here says we should ask for it, and then I'll put on my different hat when we get to council and ask that question. But as a member of this board, I'm in favor of us asking the question, because there may be other different solutions we could look at. So I think Chair, it's smart on our part to ask council if we could do something with the property taxes.
Okay, happy to do that. I'd like to have a little more research, and if anybody could direct me or give me some examples of other communities, that would certainly be helpful when we present it to council.
Well, I did write down a note, Chair, to ask Paul Chisholm from London Middlesex Housing what they do with their property taxes. Yep. Councillor Kennis.
Just to reiterate, I'm all in favor of looking into this. I just think we need a well thought out. If we're going to do it one way, we need to make sure that we've researched it completely, and that we have when we make a decision, it's defendable. And that's what I'd like to see. Unrelated to a question, I know there's a couple of co-op housing projects in Strathroy. Again, they are not for profit. Do they pay property taxes?
Okay. So I think that's actually that's a really good point. So putting on the Caradoc housing point, we have to be cognizant of how the community feels about us. So if we're seen as getting an unfair advantage, there already is a little bit of bad taste in people's mouth about Caradoc housing. So that's a good point about what others would think of us, not just council, but that's a good point. So, Chair, could I suggest this, that maybe before we go to council, that we have the discussion again as Caradoc Housing, so we have our ducks in a row, because as a board, we need to be able to defend it. So if the data shows us as a board that we couldn't defend it, then we may not want to go to council. So I would maybe ask that we get our information before we go to the town. And if we had to have a special meeting just on this topic, I'd be willing to do that. But I think this is an important point.
Yeah, I agree. So let's keep it on the agenda and for the next meeting. And in the meantime, I will try to gather some information, and Mayor Grantham, if you're able to get some information, and if Director Dakin has anything to offer to the conversation, we can maybe just bring it all back and look at it again with some more information about what other municipalities are doing, what the impacts might be, and some of the benefits and potential, I guess, cons against doing that. If everybody agrees on that, then that's what I think we should, how we should proceed.
And just, I should know this by looking at the budget. Director Dakin, what are the expected property taxes on this property?
Just off the top of my head, I think it was around 50,000 of 600,000, I think is what we had. 600,000 was our total budget, and 50 or 58,000 was sort of what we projected. So that would be 10%, I think.
Okay, that's
on both properties. What does Parkview Manor pay?
You're making me do a calculation here now, which is okay. So they pay 24. They pay 24,000.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions on the property taxes? Seeing none, we'll move to 7.1, update on request for proposal for property manager. Chair, did you have that, or are we turning that over to Director Dakin?
I I can take that.
Okay,
So,
thanks, Director.
I checked the minutes from the last meeting, which I was absent from, and it said there was some discussion being taken place about the RFP. So since at our budget meeting, Member Zavitz has provided me with a RFP that was used in Chatham, Kent. So I think probably the quickest way to deal with this, because I think this is of the essence, we need to get this out sooner than later. I did take a look at that, and it looked like fairly fulsome, so I think we can send that out. I know some of the comments I saw prior to last meeting around the RFP were more along the lines of the contract that we would have, so like terms and references that we would have within the contract with the successful proponent. So I will circulate the RFP that was provided by Member Zavitz. I think it's solid, and if I get the green light from council, from the board, we'll get that up right away and get that out. It would have to be up for 2 weeks, so if we were to do that ASAP, we could probably have the majority of them back to be scored by that October meeting. So that would work out well, I think.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? Did you have anything, Chair Pammer?
I just want to say, I think that sounds like a great plan. So if you could get that out and get the board, give the board, when you send out that email, Director Dakin, a date and a time to get back to you on, so that we're not holding things up, because I really would like to have this on the agenda for the next meeting.
I have one for Director Dakin. There was thought at one time about approaching London Middlesex Housing to see if they had any appetite for this, but I can't remember where that discussion went.
I don't believe we heard anything back from them, so what I will do is I will send a message when we post it to Paul over there, and if they're wanting to take a stab at it, then it'll be available just like everyone else.
Okay, that's fine, and I have a meeting with them tomorrow night, so I will.
So you can maybe mention that there's
I will
gonna be
mention
something
it.
posted if he wants
Yeah.
to.
Okay, any other on the RFP? Vacancy, Caradoc Housing Corporation Board Member, again, it's you, Chair Pammer.
Yes, so at the last meeting, he had a resignation, and so Heather, Member Heather and I went through the applications that had been sent to the town when we had the call out for board members. And from that, we reviewed them, and we both agreed to contact Jeff Lund, which I did, and he has agreed to join the board. So I'll be bringing his name forth to the next council meeting for approval. And then once approved, Jeff will be able to join our board effective the October meeting.
Okay, any questions? Okay, seeing none. A recommendation of the board move into closed session. Motion, Councillor Kennis, second by Member Zavitz, all in favor?
count down from 10 and you're ready to go.
Thank you. The board met in closed session to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual and a procedural matter to approve in-camera meeting minutes as permitted by section 239B of the Ontario Municipal Act and Council's procedure bylaw. Are there any inquiries or comments by members? Chair Palmer.
Right, there we go. We have Parkview Manor, and then we have a building called Adelaide Road. And I was just wondering if there was ever any discussion about naming the building. I don't know any, we just seem to always refer to it as the address. And I'm wondering if that's something that the board is interested in doing, in giving the project a name or the building a name. And yeah, how we might like, if we want to do that, how we could discuss how we want to proceed.
Any comments? I just have one, I didn't know you could bring up, but sometimes naming becomes problematic in the community, so we name it and maybe just name it by its address, you know, Adelaide Road, if it's whatever it is, 535 Adelaide, but I don't know what you would call it, but it's a discussion, right? It's what we name it. We can certainly think about it.
Right. Yeah, just a follow up to that. You know, certainly naming has to be done very carefully, but I do think that it might have some value to the community. So maybe we can just explore that a little bit further. I'm willing to just talk to a few people. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later, unless anybody has any strong objections to not, you know, discussing it or looking into it.
No, I just had an idea that popped in my head. We'll talk offline. Okay. Any other inquiries or comments by members? Just my lone comment is, Sharon, is for all of us that as soon as we can get more information out to the community as to rents and what this is, and even plans for an opening of the building, you know, when and if it's ready to be open, then we have a community open house. We need to engage the community. Okay. So seeing no other comments or inquiries, the next meeting is Wednesday, October 18th at 11:30. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Kennis, second by member Zavitz, all in favor? Carried.